The executive's sneer was a mask of arrogance. "I don't shake hands with staff," Richard Sterling announced. The black woman across the table didn't flinch, her voice a quiet blade. "An expensive lesson. I trust you'll remember it." An hour earlier, Isabella Reed had pulled her modest sedan into a visitor spot at Apex Innovations. Today's mission: determine if Apex and its celebrated CEO deserve the $1.5 billion investment from her firm, Reed Equity Group. She scanned the glass and steel headquarters, a monument to ambition and, according to her research, a deeply toxic culture. Inside, the receptionist's practiced smile faltered when she saw Isabella. "I have an 11 o'clock with Richard Sterling," Isabella said. "Are you here for an administrative interview?" Brenda, the receptionist, asked. "HR is on the third floor." "No, my appointment is with Mr. Sterling," Isabella clarified. "The name is Isabella Reed." Skepticism clouded the receptionist's face. "Please have a seat over there." She gestured toward a small, isolated area away from the VIP lounge where two white men were being served coffee. Isabella noted the slight and took a seat. She observed the sea of white, male faces and felt the weight of their hushed whispers and unspoken assumptions. 50 minutes passed before Sterling's assistant finally appeared. She wasn't led to the boardroom, but to a small, windowless room where Richard Sterling sat scrolling through his phone. He gestured vaguely at a chair without looking up. Three other executives, all white men, exchanged knowing smirks. It was a well-worn playbook of disrespect. Isabella decided to let them play their game. Finally, Sterling put down his phone. "So," he began, his voice oozing condescension, "you're here about our diversity program?" "I'm here," she said calmly, "to discuss a significant investment opportunity." Sterling's lips twisted into a smirk. "Right, an investment." He loaded the word with disbelief. As he began his presentation, a text from her CFO, Michael, lit up her screen. "Team is on standby. Ready on your signal." "Let me walk you through what we do here," Sterling said, his voice slow and deliberate, as if talking to a child. After a slide defining an algorithm, he leaned in. "Are you following so far?" Behind him, two executives snickered. Isabella leaned forward. "Your prospectus mentioned a proprietary deep learning architecture. Can you explain how it differs from standard transformer models, specifically regarding inference latency at scale?" Sterling blinked, his smug expression faltering. "Well, that's pretty technical. My CTO can explain that later." "I'm also interested in a discrepancy in your Q2 financials," Isabella pressed on. "You reported a 22% drop in R&D spending while claiming expanded research. How do you reconcile those facts?" Sterling's face hardened. He skipped past the financial slides. "I think those numbers are a little outside the scope of this meeting. Let's stick to more appropriate topics, like our diversity initiatives." His authority threatened, Sterling doubled down. "Let's take a quick 5, he announced. He turned to Isabella, a fake smile plastered on his face. "How do you take your coffee? A lot of cream and sugar, I bet." The racist jab landed with a thud. Isabella paused, then met his gaze. "Before we continue," she said, her voice dangerously level, "I want to see your diversity statistics for every executive position in this company." The meeting moved to a larger conference room. Sterling brought in reinforcements, including Victor Cole, the company's diversity officer, the only other black person she had seen in the building. "Victor will walk us through our diversity programs," Sterling announced grandly. "What's the retention rate for minority hires?" Isabella asked, cutting through the rehearsed speech. "And how many have been promoted into senior leadership in the last 5 years?" Sterling waved her questions away. "We're making progress." Just then, the door swung open and 5 more white executives in their 50s swaggered in. Sterling beamed, greeting them with loud backslaps while Isabella sat invisible for 3 full minutes. When he finally remembered her, his introduction was a calculated insult. "Gentlemen, this is Isabella. She's here to talk about diversity. Not Ms. Reed, not a potential investor, just Isabella." One of the men, Paul Kirby, leaned to his neighbor and whispered loud enough for her to hear, "It's the diversity quota visit. Smile and nod. She'll be gone by lunch." Sterling turned back to her, his tone dripping with patronage. "Perhaps," he suggested, "you'd like to share your story with the men. I'm sure they'd be fascinated to hear about your journey." The implication was clear. Her only value in this room was as a token. Isabella ignored his patronizing suggestion and began discussing market trends. Sterling cut her off with a laugh. That's not what we're interested in. We want your perspective. He let the insult hang in the air. Just then, the door opened. A distinguished white man entered. Sterling's face lit up as he shot to his feet. Robert, glad you could make it. After a warm greeting, Sterling turned back to Isabella. Their eyes met. In that moment, he made his choice. He folded his arms across his chest. I don't shake hands with staff, he stated plainly, a smirk on his lips. A leaden silence fell. Some executives looked away. Others, like Paul Kirby, grinned openly. Isabella felt no shock, only the cold, satisfying click of the final piece falling into place. This was the evidence she came for. Without breaking eye contact with Sterling, she reached for her phone and sent a single word to her team. Execute. If you'll excuse me, she said, rising from her seat. I need to use the restroom. Sterling waved her away dismissively, his attention already on Robert. The men resumed their conversation as if she had never existed. In the cool silence of the restroom, her hand was steady as she dialed her CFO. Michael, she said, initiate phase 1. The team is ready, Michael confirmed. We're starting the market signals now. Good, Isabella said, and prepare the documentation. I've recorded everything. She ended the call. Today was different. Today she held a power they hadn't bothered to recognize. Meanwhile, Sterling was gloating. Another diversity box checked, he chuckled. Suddenly, his assistant, Emily, burst in, her face pale. Sir, you need to see this. She held out a tablet. Apex stock had dropped 1.5% in minutes. No news. No reason. It's just market fluctuation, Sterling snapped, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. When Isabella returned, the mood had soured. Men were glued to their phones. Is something wrong? She asked innocently. Nothing that concerns you, Sterling replied curtly. I think we're done here. We have actual business to attend to. Of course, Isabella agreed. I just need one final meeting. With you. Alone, annoyed but eager to be rid of her, Sterling led her to his corner office. The moment the door closed, Isabella's demeanor hardened. I'd like to review my experience here, she began, her voice cold. The 50-minute wait, the condescending presentation, being called staff, being told my only value was as a token. Sterling opened his mouth, but she cut him off. And I've recorded every second of it. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. As her words landed, his phone buzzed. An urgent flag. Major shareholders. I need to take this, he growled. While Sterling paced, hissing into the receiver, Isabella calmly surveyed the trophies and photos in his office. A shrine to his success, with a glaring absence of any non-white faces. What do you mean down 3%? He snarled into his phone. Reed Equity Group? Never heard of them. He went silent, his eyes darting from his phone to Isabella, then to his computer. She watched him type, watched the blood drain from his face as her name filled his screen. Isabella Reed, founder and CEO, Reed Equity Group, over $40 billion in managed assets, known for pulling all funding from companies with toxic leadership. He slammed the phone down, the arrogance gone, replaced by raw panic. Ms. Reed, he stammered, I believe there has been a terrible misunderstanding. If I'd known, there was no misunderstanding, Isabella interrupted. You were perfectly clear about who you thought I was and how you treat people you don't value. She turned for the door. He blocked her path. Please, he begged. We can come to an arrangement. The commotion drew stares from employees in the hall, their phones quietly rising. The time for a discussion, Isabella said, her voice cutting through his pleas, was when you thought I was a nobody. You can't do this, he whispered desperately. Isabella stepped around him. I can, she said simply, and I am. As she walked toward the elevators, the stock ticker on the lobby's display flashed bright red. Apex Innovations was down 7%, and the free fall was accelerating. Panic ignited throughout Apex Innovations. On every screen, headlines bloomed, detailing Reed Equity Group's history of financially crippling companies that tolerated toxic leadership. In the boardroom, Richard Sterling paced like a caged animal. How did this happen? How did no one know who she was? His assistant trembled. The meeting was just listed as I Reed Strategic Partner Inquiry. You said it was just a diversity obligation meeting, so no one did a deep background. We need to find dirt on her. Paul Kirby, the executive who had mocked her, blurted out, "Everyone has skeletons. We find hers, we threaten to go public unless she backs off." Sterling, drowning in desperation, actually considered it for a moment. His phone rang. He tried to call Isabella, but a cool, professional voice answered. "Reed Equity Group, this is Richard Sterling. I need to speak with Ms. Reed immediately." "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling," the voice replied. "Ms. Reed only takes scheduled calls from partners, not staff. Would you like to leave a message?" Before he could respond, a news alert hit every screen. Reed Equity Group had issued a public statement. "We are reconsidering all investments in companies lacking a demonstrable culture of inclusion." Apex wasn't named, but it didn't have to be. The stock, already down 7%, tipped into a 15% free fall. Then a calendar invitation chimed on his phone. "Final investment decision meeting. Reed Equity Group. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. A single line was added in the notes. "You may bring one attorney." The next morning, financial news shows were buzzing. Apex Technologies was in crisis. When Sterling arrived at his office, he saw his board of directors already meeting in the main conference room. He hadn't been invited. His assistant met him, holding a stack of letters from furious shareholders demanding his resignation. Then his phone rang. It was the board chair. "Richard," the voice said, cold as ice, "we've uncovered a series of discrimination complaints filed against you. Complaints that were buried by HR. Why are we just learning about this now?" Before he could answer, 2 security guards appeared at his office door. He was suspended, effective immediately. Sterling arrived at the Reed Equity Group headquarters with his lawyer, his usual confidence replaced by a tense, haunted look. The receptionist directed them to a seating area. They waited for 50 minutes, exactly as long as Isabella had been forced to wait. When they were finally escorted into the conference room, Sterling froze. This wasn't a meeting, it was an execution. Isabella Reed sat at the head of a massive table, dressed in a suit that radiated quiet power. She was flanked by her entire board, her executive team, and, to Sterling's horror, representatives from 3 other major investment firms. "Mr. Sterling," Isabella said, her voice calm, "please take a seat." He stumbled into a chair, his lawyer beside him. "Ms. Reed," he began, "I want to express my sincere regret for any—" "This is not about your regret, Richard," Isabella interrupted, her voice cutting through his rehearsed apology. "This is about accountability." She opened a folder. "We weren't just considering a $1.5 billion investment. We were evaluating Apex for a complete acquisition. Your company was a test case." One of the other investors leaned forward. "Ms. Reed approached our firms months ago. We have formed a coalition. Together, we control over $150 billion in capital. Companies with discriminatory leadership will no longer receive a dime from any of us." The air left Sterling's lungs. Isabella wasn't asking for a seat at his table. She had built a bigger one, and he wasn't invited. She slid a thick binder across the polished wood. It was filled with damning evidence, testimonials from former employees, internal emails, and proof of pay disparities. "This is reverse discrimination," Sterling choked out, a last desperate gasp. "You're targeting me because I'm a white man." Isabella's expression remained unchanged. She pressed a button. The room's speakers played his own voice, dripping with arrogance. "I don't shake hands with staff." The recording continued, each condescending remark, each racist microaggression, echoing in the dead silence. When it ended, Sterling sat, utterly defeated, his face ashen. "What? What do you want?" he whispered. Isabella leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. "I want your resignation, effective immediately. You will sign it right now, along with this non-disclosure agreement that forbids you from ever working in this industry again." She pushed a single sheet of paper and a pen toward him. "If you refuse, this binder," she tapped the thick document, "along with the audio recordings goes to the SEC, the Department of Labor, and every major news outlet in the country. You'll be facing federal investigation and shareholder lawsuits that will bankrupt you." His lawyer frantically scribbled on a notepad, but Sterling didn't look at it. He stared at the woman he had dismissed, the woman he had insulted, the woman who now held his entire world in her hands. With a trembling hand, he picked up the pen. As he signed away his career, 2 uniformed security officers entered the room. They stood behind his chair waiting. "One more thing," Isabella said. She nodded to one of the officers. The guard stepped forward and placed a small, clear plastic bag on the table. "Your badge and access cards, Mr. Sterling." The sound of the plastic crinkling was the only sound in the room as Richard Sterling, defeated and humiliated, dropped his credentials into the bag. His reign was over. Justice had been served.